Good evening, folks. This is the Factivist Project with the Factivist report stream for Sunday, the 27th of March. We're going to talk a little bit about Supreme Court. We may be having multiple weeks on this topic, but at the end of this, I will give you a brief update on the website status and let you know what the plan is. But right now, we're going to turn it over to Dave.
So before I get into it, I want people to know, I know if anybody's been following this topic, they've been looking at a lot of videos, looking into Marsha Blackburn, Screech, or Josh Hawley, or any of these people. We're not going to be really talking about the hearing itself right this second. I will probably be doing some of that next week in terms of kind of dismantling some of the arguments of the right wing. But what I want to talk about today is a little bit of background about the Supreme Court, the purpose of the Supreme Court, and the purpose of civics and accountability in general. So let's get into it.
Let me just say one thing about the questioning of Kachani Brown Jackson.
Jackson Brown.
Messed that up again. I was called it Jackson Brown again because I got music on the brain all the time. I think we should point out that the grilling the GOP is doing is off the fucking rails. None of it has anything to do with the rule of law. All right, asking someone to define what a woman is, as Marsha Blackburn did,
right,
and that kind of stuff. Asking people about their religious. That's unconstitutional. It's unconstitutional, first of all. Yeah. But God forbid that they should know that because they're only elected representatives. Right. But just so you know, we will be going there because that needs to be called out.
Oh, absolutely, and it will be called out. And there were some reasons that the Republicans gave, and the ultimate reason, honestly, is they were throwing a hissy because of previous justices or previous appointees and how they were treated. Specifically, the one that I'm going to be talking about today is the one that started it all, and that's Robert Bork.
Right. Back
in 1987. So let's go. Now, this is from a couple years ago. This is from the Brookings Institute talking about the needs for civic education in 21st century schools. Pardon me.
By the way, civics has been removed for the curriculum for a reason, okay?
Yep.
Because these people, and let's make it absolutely abundantly clear. The right wing has removed it, okay? And it's been removed because they don't want you to know how government should work, all right? That's the idea. Let's keep everybody in the dark here.
Now, the Brookings Institute called for it 2 years ago. So did the Heritage Foundation. All of these will be in the sources. You guys can take a look at it. And even Fox News, which made me laugh. But what I thought was, and by the way, this is, if you want to know more about the Constitution, here is a guide to the Constitution that I thought was very good. So this is from the justice.gov site. Take a look at it. There was a point, there is a reporter for the Washington Post. She does a lot on civics. Her name is Valerie Strauss. This is from a couple years ago. Why more and better civics education can't save us, and what civics education should really look like. Her point is that there are two main reasons why just adding civics courses aren't going to help. Number one, the massive influx of misinformation, of propaganda, of just things that we inherently as a nation believe now, that vaccines don't work, that the government's against us, that 9/11 and all of the conspiracy theories and all of that this just inherent distrust of government, and also just this inability to work with one another. Now, I'm not talking about the extreme right wing, by the way, which Deb mentioned. Our just breaking point is if you don't believe everybody has the same rights,
we're not working.
That's a deal breaker.
That's a deal breaker.
Beyond that, people need to learn how to work with one another again.
Particularly, can I say this? People on the left.
Yes.
People on the right, they're all together. They're together for one goal, and that's to take power. And the people on the left need to get their shit together and deny that power.
There is a left and there is a right rift. Now, this is something that was brought up by Valerie Strauss. This is a resource. It is called the Educating for Civic Reasoning and Discourse. This heavily includes different cultures from different races. This would be summarily dismissed from the right wing right now as CRT.
Right.
So this is because civics education and just learning about our country has devolved to such a state. Not only do our children not know that much about civics education, guess who else doesn't know? Our legislators.
Right.
Like this article, again, from the Washington Post. I'm going to get a lot. I'm going to give you a lot from the Washington Post and from Howard Zinn because, hey, the right wing drives them crazy and it happens to be true.
And, I'm sorry, as far as reporting goes, fucking Washington Post, it's a rock star for me.
What isn't in the Constitution? A guide for tweeting senators.
By the way, let me just say this about Rick Scott's 11-point plan.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know that he doesn't understand the Constitution or whether he just doesn't give a flying fuck about the Constitution. But the point in his plan where children will have to say the Pledge of Allegiance every day, that's unconstitutional.
Yep.
Nobody can be forced to say the Pledge of Allegiance in a school setting under any circumstances. And prayer is the same thing. That's unconstitutional.
So here are a few of them. Let's see here. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The full sentence is, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and that they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, and among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And to put a finer point on it, life was not a pro-life statement. Abortion did exist in 1776, but the concept for being for abortion rights was not a thing. Of the people, by the people, for the people was the Gettysburg Address.
Oops.
Yeah. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. Declaration of Independence again. So on and on. There's separation of church and state. First Amendment does not guarantee a separation of church and state, but it guarantees that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. We're looking straight at you, Heidi St. John.
Right.
By the way. Innocent until proven guilty is a holdover from English common law. You will not find this expression in the Constitution or any of its amendments, though it underpins a lot of them, like the right not to self-incriminate. So this is one for Marsha Blackburn, who I will get into. There's actually a really good, another Washington Post article about the unfairness of her argument about define what a woman is. We'll get into that next week.
Yeah, that was a poke at transgenderism.
Yep. Blackburn is correct. Neither the word nor the concept of abortion is mentioned in the original text of the Constitution or any of its amendments. However, following English common law, abortion before quickening, noticeable fetal movement was not considered a crime back then. So there you go, Marcia. This is the Supreme Court official website. And I will read 4 words: equal justice under the law. So if you are Lindsey Graham and you're screeching and leaving the halls because you thought that the
fucking snowflake and you acting like a goddamn baby. Oh.
because the Guantanamo guys were treated too easily or whatever. Everybody is entitled to a defense.
Right.
Again, we'll get into that more, but it's equal justice under the law. It's obviously it's very complicated. There are a few things. You have to have unbiased justices, which we will get into, centering oneself or recusal in a minute. And also you have to follow precedent, which I will talk about a little bit later too. You cannot have an agenda.
Right.
This is just a website that I looked at when looking at the history of the Supreme Court. This is something that I implore anybody who is really interested in this topic to look at the Presidential Commission on the Supreme Court of the United States, because you're going to hear a lot of the Republicans screaming about Joe Biden packing the court. There are
already been packed.
And that's actually the argument. Yeah, that's actually the argument. That's actually the argument in the commission. It's around page 70, I believe. There were several reasons why Supreme Court justices over the years have been added or subtracted or whatever. You have to realize that back when it was first formed, the country was not that big. So then they added justices as they actually got more land. And then different things happened. There was a situation during the New Deal, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. They had 9 justices on the court. 6 of them were against his New Deal and were sitting on the court until he either gave up or left or whatever. Franklin Delano Roosevelt wanted to add a justice for each justice over 70 years old to try to balance it out. And they accused Democrats wanted it. So eventually a couple of the guys either left or died off, and it was kind of a moot point. But there's always been this thing about the Democrats want to pack the court. The point of adding justices is a matter of trying to keep it representative of the country,
right?
And not have justices because of certain tactics, such as what happened with the Trump administration,
right?
Or with the Republicans holding Merrick Garland, and then within a month of Ruth Bader Ginsburg passing away, they push Amy Coney Barrett in.
And by the way, they stymied Merrick Garland because Obama was potentially out, right?
Yep.
But the same didn't apply when Trump wanted to put people in. He managed to ran through his choices. None of those rules applied on the GOP side when it came down to that last selection. So
right.
It's bullshit.
Now I have to say that this commission, they mention the recent things that happened, and that would be the reason why you would want to not pack the court but balance the court, possibly this goes into rotation and all that stuff, but possibly add a couple of seats and then not add any until the court gets below 9 again.
Right. Just
to balance it out. It's not packing the court. The argument that the Democrats have made since Amy Coney Barrett is that the court has already been packed.
Yep.
By the Trump administration and by the Republicans because of the holding of the Merrick Garland seat and then the pushing through of Amy Coney Barrett.
And that's what the plan was. That was the plan. The plan in holding Merrick Garland was to be sure that they could own the fucking Supreme Court. And by the way, Merrick Garland, he is not what I would consider a left winger. He is more of a centrist kind of guy. He's the guy who will rule on the rule of law. He's not a guy who's going to say, you know, I'm a left winger, so I'm going to vote for this. He's not. He's not what you would call, you know, a hardcore left winger. But,
right.
You know, Gorsuch, Thomas, all of those guys, they were all hardcore right wingers.
I remember when Kavanaugh was being confirmed that people were comparing him to Merrick Garland.
Really?
Yeah, because I believe they were actually in the same class.
Maybe.
And they had, well, we're not going into, but in terms of record, they had very similar decisions.
Right.
So what's the problem? It's because Obama was the one who nominated him.
Right. And let's say it. Can we say it? Obama was black. Whatever it took for them to stymie him, they did.
Now, if you want a change with the Supreme Court, one of the limitations of the Supreme Court, one of the issues with the Supreme Court, and I have something coming up from Howard Zinn. The limitation of the Supreme Court is they don't create law. They should not be creating law. They just interpret it.
Right.
And they are almost a mirror of those who not only nominate them, but also confirm them. So they are a reflection of where we are right now. Where we are right now is a mess. So you're going to get a few.
You got that right.
Yeah. And speaking of a mess, everybody thinks this started in 2016.
No way.
The enduring myth of Robert Bork. Okay. This started the whole thing of you have to look at a nominee's ideology and make sure that they aren't so far off the pale, that they aren't so far off in terms of ideology that they are going to take the country off the rails. This is the guy.
Yep.
The problem now is that we have legislators who are now so far off the mark and crazy that they potentially could derail real justices.
Right.
Such as Ketanji Brown Jackson.
Right.
Now here's a little bit of history of Robert Bork, and here is why he wasn't confirmed. But by the way, historically, and 6 Republicans voted against him.
Right.
To most liberals, the ordeal is little more than a bit of political trivia, but to conservatives, the shadow of Robert Bork still looms over American politics. These guys are still yowling about him not being confirmed.
Right. He shouldn't have been confirmed, though, by the way.
No, and I'm gonna give you some reasons why. What happened to Bork, they claim, was the original sin of Supreme Court nominations. Democrats had thrown down the gauntlet with their unprecedented and unjust opposition to Bork's appointment. And the process had been a political battlefield ever since. The problem with this particular nominee is that he was so extreme and radical that he would have potentially disrupted precedent.
Right.
What exactly was unfair about Bork's treatment is unclear. No falsehoods about him were told, nor was his personal life a major topic of discussion. Bork, perhaps more than any other nominee in history, lost on his merits. His rejection was a result of a judicial philosophy far to the right of the average American. He had spent his time as a law professor developing a theory of antitrust law that advocated for minimal government, regulation of behemoth corporations. And by the way, I'm sure that sounds good to some people. Hold on. And paved the way for unprecedented levels of concentrated corporate power as we see today. In 1963, he wrote an article for the New Republic titled Civil Rights, a Challenge, in which he argued that forcing business owners to serve minorities is a principle of unsurpassed ugliness.
He was a despicable individual.
He's a bigot.
I could not stand him, no matter what. By the way, he also fired.
I was getting there.
Yeah, go ahead.
Bork was instrumental in Watergate's Saturday Night Massacre, where he fired Special Prosecutor Archibald Cox at President Nixon's request. So he was involved in Watergate, at least in that capacity. The list goes on. Bork did not believe the Equal Protection Clause applied to women, who he claimed in 2011 aren't discriminated against anymore. He argued that vulgar or explicit art isn't protected by the First Amendment. I remember this whole thing about Mapplethorpe with him.
Yep,
he flipped out. Yeah. Expressly advocating for aggressive censorship of movies, music, and the internet. He believed that poll taxes and literacy tests for voters were constitutional.
Wow.
Tax as an issue. He had ruled as a federal judge that an employer could force female employees to choose between being fired or being sterilized. I'm going to read that again. He had ruled as a federal judge that an employer could force female employees to choose between being fired or being sterilized. He was aggressively homophobic, ultimately spending a sizable portion of his post-judicial career promoting a constitutional amendment to ban same-sex marriage. Now, I will say this because we haven't gotten to the slide yet. That sentence shows you that there's already laws on the books. He was trying to overturn already rulings on same-sex marriage.
Right.
By creating a constitutional amendment. Right. So he was actively, after he was not confirmed, he was actively trying to take rights away from people.
Right.
And as a judge, he actively tried to take the rights away from a working woman. This is not the guy.
Right.
Bork was hounded on these topics at his confirmation hearing when Wyoming Senator Alan Simpson, a Republican, tried to toss him a softball by asking why he wanted to be on the Supreme Court. Bork responded it would be an intellectual feast.
Jesus Christ.
I'm just saying. So, yeah. This is just for reference. The 6 Republicans that voted against it. This is from the LA Times. John Chaffee of Rhode Island, Bob Packwood of Oregon, Arlen Specter of Pennsylvania, Robert Stafford, John Warner, and Lowell Weicker. These guys are not, by any stretch of the imagination, left-wingers. 2 Democrats, one from Oklahoma, one from South Carolina, actually voted for him. David Boren of Oklahoma and Ernest Hollings. So
I'm not surprised.
Yeah. So there were a couple of people are talking already about impeaching Clarence Thomas. It's not that easy. I want you to understand that. There were 2 instances in which a Supreme Court justice was either impeached or removed. The most recent was Abe Fortas, and he was only in for, I think, about a year or so. And then they found out about some spectacular fraud and crimes and stuff. When Richard Nixon asked you to resign, there's a problem.
Right.
But he didn't get to a vote. He bowed down.
Look who nominated him, Lyndon Johnson, who probably would have been the only president to go to jail for corruption.
Right. So, but in order to have someone resign or be impeached and removed, there has to be overwhelming evidence. There was overwhelming evidence in this case. And there are, by the way, when things like this happen, there are financial records. There are things you can track.
Right.
And this was before the internet, so they still got it. So only one Supreme Court justice has ever been impeached. And it just reminded me of Trump because his name is Old Bacon Face. So Supreme Court Justice Samuel Chase, not only was he an asshole, I mean, from what people were saying, and he was obnoxious and crude, et cetera, but he participated in fraudulent, corrupt court practices.
Right.
He would coach one side. He would, obviously take the side of, et cetera. But the point being is they were able to impeach him, but they weren't able to remove him because they didn't have the votes. You have to have a 2/3 majority.
Right. Which would, mean you'd have to have Republicans voting to oust Clarence Thomas, and that's just not going to happen.
You have to have a really solid majority,
right?
And at least have a few Republicans who are willing to say, okay, it's time to go.
These are Republicans who knew that Donald Trump was lying about losing the election, and they couldn't impeach him on that grounds. So
right,
it's not going to happen.
You have to wait for more evidence. By the way, we don't have the evidence yet.
Right.
Just because his wife, you might have plenty of evidence on her, you have to have a link between her and him.
Right.
I understand that.
She will go before the January 6th commission. She needs to be called out. She needs to be punished, and she needs to be, regardless of whether he's on the court or not, the hammer needs to come down on her.
Yes.
But the
and
fact
if there's solid evidence on him too, but
a bigger link between him and her on this topic.
I just thought this was interesting. This is again from the Supreme Court site. If you want to look at opinions and just kind of just search around different stuff that had news media on it about the courts, different justices, their voting records, opinions, filings, rulings, oral arguments, a lot of stuff in here. You could just take a look. In terms of the Supreme Court, I thought it was appropriate to put Howard Zinn in here. A couple things about what Howard Zinn said. Basically, what he's saying is don't despair about the Supreme Court, because they aren't going to be the ones to cause our downfall. It's going to be the people who nominate them. Their job is not to create law. Their job is to interpret law.
Right.
There is a real problem lately, and I have a dissent by Sonia Sotomayor. She brought it out that people are kind of ignoring that they are ignoring precedent now, and that's a real issue. But it would be naive to depend on the Supreme Court to defend the rights of poor people, women, people of colors, and dissenters of all kinds. It would be,
right?
Unless it's already established law, and sometimes that might not even happen. So we need to stop obsessing over the Supreme Court. I don't know about that, but what we need
to obsess more over the legislators.
Correct. The crimes in the recent nominations and the recent appointments are partially responsible for electing these people,
right? For
electing Trump, for electing some of these Republicans and some of the Democrats too.
Yep.
One of the things too that Howard Zinn brought up is that you aren't really going to learn that much about a Supreme Court nominee in the hearing, other than can they answer a question properly. And most of these guys know perfectly well what's going to be asked and what they're going to say.
Right.
And by the way, Ketanji Brown Jackson didn't do anything wrong.
Correct.
In those. So this is a video. It's about 50 years from Roe v. Wade. It's coming up next year. It's the different answers in regards to Roe v. Wade from nominees from 1980 on. I believe it's starting from Sandra Day O'Connor.
When are they supposed to hand down the decision on Roe v. Wade? I thought it was spring of this year.
I thought so too, but I don't know what's happening with that.
Yeah, I'll look it up later.
One of the issues that many people had on Amy Coney Barrett, other than the fact that she was shoved through from a lame duck president, is that she actively is speaking against abortion, says that abortion is immoral, and helped or participated in an anti-abortion ad. So when you hear again Lindsey Graham yelling or screeching about how Amy Coney Barrett was treated because she was a Catholic, it wasn't because she was a Catholic. It was because of what she was saying about abortion.
Right. I believe she was also, you can correct me if I'm wrong, stated that she doesn't necessarily follow precedent.
She actually, no, she said in terms of abortion, she said that the core of let me see if it's in here. The core
of Roe v. Wade won't change.
However, what she's trying to do is make it so expensive that they can't afford it in the first place.
So essentially she sucks.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. She's not taking away the right. She's just taking away the affordability of the right. Sonia Sotomayor rocks. We'll just say that.
I really like her a lot. I do.
it takes a lot for something to be overturned. This may help overturn anything in regards to something that ignored precedent during this time. This may help, but it takes a lot for something to be overturned. So she's, she really lit into certain people. I believe she named Kavanaugh specifically in regards to
the Texas abortion ban.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
So it's it's coming. Don't think that people's rights aren't going to be affected.
Right.
This is a list of 12 cases that actually were overturned over time. It takes some time to do this because there's a Supreme Court case that is decided. You're not going to next year change it.
Right.
There's only two ways that you can overturn a Supreme Court case. You can amend the Constitution, which requires approvals by 3/4 of state legislatures. It has happened before. You saw that, Robert Bork was pushing for an amendment to ban gay marriage. And then the Supreme Court can overturn one of its past decisions, but there are specific things that have to happen. It happens when a different case involving the same constitutional issue as an earlier case is reviewed by the court and is seen in a new light, typically because of changing social and political situations. So I see that happening probably, if we're still around, 10, 20 years down the road when all of this kind of is flushed out, hopefully. This is another way to look at case summaries. You just put in a search topic, and I just put in CRT. This is a way to see what kind of precedents exist. This touches on the Ginny Thomas situation, about how she is embedded in the political system and how she was involved in Stop the Steal, et cetera, et cetera.
And by the way, if you have read her texts, and she didn't have just texts to Mark Meadows, but also to Jared Kushner.
Yep.
If you have read this woman's text, she is not just a danger to the Supreme Court. She's a danger to this country. She is a total QAnon. It's amazing. I was reading her stuff, and I just can't. I guess I just can't believe it. I didn't realize she was so far off the edge.
Right.
She definitely is.
There are rules in regards to the fact that a Supreme Court justice or a judge cannot be judged on their spouse's opinions. However, you cannot personally tell me that Justice Thomas is not affected and or influenced by this.
Well, what I will suggest that we put in here is that New York Times article, so that people understand that Clarence and Virginia Thomas spent a lifetime together pushing this country further to the right.
Yeah.
That has been their goal for a very, very long time.
Yeah, I forgot about that one. And yeah. So this is something I added because we do have to push back on this. Now, it's going to be very difficult to impeach anyone. Everybody's saying impeach Kavanaugh, impeach this one, impeach that one. As we said, it's going to be very difficult, if not impossible, to do that.
You might have a better chance with Kavanaugh because
maybe
he legitimately does have a lot of allegations against him.
Right.
About
in all
how he
honesty,
treats women.
In all honesty, you might have a better chance if we get enough people, if we get enough of a turnover in the Democratic Party just to add justices.
Right.
I mean, I'm just saying, I mean, that's a long shot too, but as I said, it takes a lot. But something that would be easier to do is to call for recusal on certain cases.
Right.
Now, Ketanji Brown Jackson already said that she's going to recuse herself in regards to a specific case. The problem is justices do not have to recuse themselves. So you're basically putting a case.
You're asking them to police themselves.
Yeah, you're being detrimental potentially to a case because someone's being honorable.
Right.
So
because, well, the cases, I believe the case that she's talking about is a Harvard University case.
Yes.
On what the hell's it called? I forget what it's called. I don't remember what it was, but there's a Harvard University case and she's recusing herself because she's a graduate of Harvard. But then there are several, aren't there, justices who are graduates of Harvard?
Including but not limited to Clarence Thomas. Right. So Amy, yeah.
If she recuses herself, then I'm going to suggest to you that Clarence Thomas should have to recuse himself.
Right. Klobuchar says Thomas must recuse himself from election cases over wife's text. There should be an increased pressure about this. And by the way, not only from him, but for anybody who has a potential conflict of interest in any case, whether it be, on quote unquote our side or their side. So here's there is no set standard on recusal in the Supreme Court. There are in federal judges, like the lower courts, but not with the Supreme Court, and that needs to change. It just needs to change.
Yep, it does.
There was one case that in particular scared me. I saw a few different cases, some of the the voting cases and that kind of stuff, but this one really got me.
By the way, let me just interject this Harvard case is affirmative action. That's the case that's in front of the Supreme Court. That's the one that she's talking about recusing herself from.
Okay. The Supreme Court rules that Joe Biden is commander-in-chief. 3 justices dissent. And if this case was actually went the other way, these justices would have ruled that the Supreme Court, at least in this case, would be commander-in-chief. So this is court's decision in Austin versus U.S. Navy SEALs 1 through 26 largely halted a lower court order that permitted certain sailors to defy a direct order. This is in regards to vaccinations, and they're claiming they have a religious exemption. A majority of the court effectively ruled that yes, in fact, troops do have to follow orders, including an order to take a vaccine. By the way, there is not a mandatory draft. These people enter the military voluntarily.
Right.
Just so you know.
And the dissenters are the usual suspects.
So we have the decision is undeniably a win for the balance of power between the executive branch and the judiciary that has prevailed for many decades. I would argue that it isn't, because they shouldn't have had to rule on this in the first place. And they shouldn't have had the Supreme Court rule on it, because it's potentially giving them an immense amount of power. But the fact that the court had to weigh on this at all, not to mention that three justices, Justice Clarence Thomas, Samuel Alito, and Neil Gorsuch, dissented from the majority, is a worrisome sign about America's judiciary. So these people, these justices are people also, with their own biases, with their own faults, with their own flaws. So they are supposedly part of a system of checks and balances. But if you shift that, it creates a potential problem.
Right.
I will be talking about kind of the reflection of where we're going in terms of accountability, and also the flaws I see in the process, because some of the questions were off the chain, and Deb mentioned some of them. Define a woman. I understand that there is no faith test, but rate your faith from 1 to 10.
And again, that is, let me say it, that is them pandering to the Christian nationalists, because they are the drivers of the GOP at this point.
Right.
The questions that are being asked by the GOP are coming from the people that they're pandering to. This is all being fed to them. They want to win. And so they're going to ask these questions, even though they're technically unconstitutional.
By the way, I would, there were a couple of things I would love to see during the hearing, to have an impartial, 3 or 4 people throw out questions. If enough questions are asked, or someone refuses to stop, their vote is taken away from them.
Yeah, there needs to be something.
Something, a way to hold people accountable. Because, the Ted Cruz stuff, the Josh Hawley stuff, all that this does is that it feeds their credibility and gives them YouTube clicks,
right,
on their little videos, and they get to go on Fox News and Newsmax and OAN.
And by the way, they're tweeting while they're questioning. You know what? It's like being in fucking school, in my opinion. Put your goddamn phone down. You know what? No, I'm sorry. Enough.
Right.
Enough.
This is supposed to be about the potential justice of the United States, not you. This isn't about you. This isn't about your advertising and blah, 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 and your campaign. You're selecting someone. There should be some kind of reverence to it.
Right.
Now, did I think that Cory Booker's video, or that Cory Booker's testimony, was a little over the top? Yes, but I understood it. And he didn't say anything that wasn't true.
And you know what? It may have been over the top, but at that point, someone needed to be over the top on her behalf. Honestly.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Honestly.
And are we huge fans of Cory Booker? We're not, but
irrelevant.
Yeah. Well, it is. That's the other thing.
That's because they're racist pricks. That's another thing that's going on here in America.
This is a historic nomination. It is the first Black woman.
Right.
And people are. And one thing that Carol Moseley Braun mentioned. Carol Moseley Braun from Illinois. She happened to be the first Black female senator ever elected, and she said, look, there's a couple things. Of course, Ketanji Brown Jackson is going to stay. She's staying in her lane because she feels like she has to do that because this is very historic and nobody, and everybody wants to kind of derail her. The other thing is that there were a lot of these questions that were very prejudicial and bigoted, frankly. Oh, Black women are soft on crime.
Right.
Black women don't understand education. Really?
No.
That was Ted Cruz. So
how would he know? Is he a black
all
woman?
All those people grilling her need to turn the cameras back on themselves.
Yeah.
Please don't. I hate looking at Ted Cruz's face. I really do. God.
I mean, that stuff was crazy. He's like, do you think this baby is racist? I mean, they're so obvious. They're so transparent.
Oh, by the way,
a lot of these people, they want her to define what a woman is. They don't even know. They don't even know all the gender identities. They don't even know science. They can just shut the fuck up.
Well, I'll get to the Marsha Blackburn argument was extremely telling about how stupid Marsha Blackburn is, but also about the process and about the way that you go about answering a question like that. Because it's like, look, I'm not a biologist, so I'm not going to, in the context in which you are answering it, I would have to look at all of the evidence before me and then render a verdict based on that.
Just asking somebody an open-ended question like that, when her job is to interpret law, was put there for her to fall into it as a mistake. That's exactly what that
and
was.
Honestly, she didn't. I mean, no matter what she said in that moment, in that instant, Marsha Blackburn would feel like she had her.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, because if she in any way other than the way she answered it, be like, aha, now we have a definition. So you will say against transgenders and blah, blah, blah. No.
And let's be clear.
Yeah.
The right-wing people, the right-wing voters, and the convoy groups and all these right-wing extremists, they're using that clip as an example to say, look at this dumb black woman. That's what they're trying to say about her. Yep. And they're using this any opportunity they can to shit on a black woman. And I no respect for them. Well, that's the only issue they really have at their core. Color of her skin is what they care about.
Dan Bongino, he jumped on that. He's been talking about that for forever now, and that's what these people wanted to do. They wanted to create sound bites and clips and clicks. That's all they're doing. They are pandering towards their base. Everybody knew it. Let's
not mention the fact that, technically speaking, the GOP really has nothing else. They don't stand on policy. They don't advance bills. They don't even write bills. The only bills that they write are, we only need to speak English in the United States. No, really. I mean, they do not write any bills that benefit the American people. I haven't found one in 10 years. They write plenty of bills to lower corporate taxes and to protect billionaires, but they have not filed one fucking piece of legislation that benefits the American people. They even balked at giving us $600 during COVID. And when we gave us $1,200 when Biden got in, not one Republican voted for that.
Right.
The Republican people out there who are not wealthy need to understand that. They're working against them too.
And also, I want to reiterate, I remember Republicans talk about, back in the day, and Reagan, our hero, the Gipper. Your hero, the Gipper,
is a fucking loser.
Nominated Robert Bork, who in a federal case advocated for the sterilization of a working woman, or that she could resign or be sterilized.
Right. Well,
that is off the chain.
it's off the chain, but the current GOP, they'd have no problem with that.
No, they wouldn't. Robert Bork would probably.
Except right now, they're worried about the white race being replaced.
Replaced.
So they want white women to keep having babies, but they wouldn't have a problem if we sterilize some black women or some Hispanic.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
Thereafter, and I told you this would happen. I know it's not nationwide, but there are states now going after contraception for married women. If you're married, you can't take birth control. I told you this would happen. It would not stop an abortion. They haven't even gotten through abortion yet, and they're going after birth control. So everybody needs to understand just what they're all about.
Did you have that chair there before?
Where?
The chair behind you.
That's where I sleep.
Oh, okay.
It's my recliner. My bed's gone.
Oh, yeah. I'm very perceptive.
Are you?
No.
All right, I'm going to kill the recording. We can talk, but I'm going to kill the recording.
All right. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Stay informed and vote.
We're not doing this for our health out here, okay?
Unless you want to vote for a right winger, then stay at home.
Right.
I'll give you right wing voting contraception.
No, but listen, we need to be advocating for people to be voting for Democrats, getting these GOP out of office, but also on top of that, we need to be holding the GOP accountable, even if we're not voting for them. We need to be calling them out because they're not calling out their party. So we have to call them out, and we have to demand, even if we don't vote for these GOP, we need to demand that these GOP stand up and do the right thing. At the bare minimum, they need to do the right thing and call out their party members.
I agree.
This is a process, though.
Yeah.
We are at a